while England is falling into rack and ruin because of the continuous and deliberate policies of the Labour and then the Conservative governments for the past 25 years, there has been a scandal around racism. You can't afford to eat, can't afford to live in a house. The world is literally degrading around you. And the most diverse government in the history of this country under an Indian prime minister having a racism scandal. And I'm just so over it. I'm so done. I don't care. I'm sick of it, right? I mean, this happened last week. So as you can see, there's just an image of the MPs debating UK border security and the MPs debating Israel's border security and Gaza's border security. And so they decided, right, we're gonna have a debate on Gaza. Oh, good, thank God.
The most important thing.
Finally.
Not a single person goes a day without dreaming of Gaza.
Well, there is a constituency that do actually think that, but they're not English, and I don't care. But the point is, they thought they'd have a debate on a Gaza ceasefire. Now, I think that's a hilarious thing to debate. You may as well debate about turning off the sun. It's not your choice. You don't have control over this. Yeah. I don't know what the hell. Oh, no, it's a moral statement. Okay, go make your moral statements. You make them all day, every day. Like, changes nothing, but okay, at least it reveals a few things. So basically what this is, the SNP are trying to get a debate on a Gaza ceasefire, and then Labour and the Tories are like, oh, we're going to start amending things, and it erupts into chaos. The purpose is for the SNP to drive a wedge between the Muslim vote and Labour. The Muslim vote, which is almost entirely homogenous and flips like the wind, apparently. 95% of Muslims are like, well, I'm not supporting Labour because they support Israel. And 90% of Muslims vote for Labour. So it's like, right.
In-group solidarity, but no other group has.
You literally have never seen something like this before. Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to let you know that we've introduced a feature on the website that allows you to purchase individual videos. So if you go over to lotus.com and see a piece of premium content that you really want to watch, you can pay for it, and it is yours forever. Anyway, so Keir Starmer was accused of threatening Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House. Lindsay Hoyle used to be Labour, by the way, so, interesting. But, of course, Starmer says, quote, I can categorically tell you that I did not threaten the Speaker in any way whatsoever. I simply urged to ensure we have the broadest possible debate. So that actually the most important thing, which is what we do in the situation in Gaza, could be properly discussed by MPs with a number of options in front of them. So, something happened in a back room. Starmer has said something like, and I'm just guessing, we don't have a transcript or anything, but he's going to say, look, if you don't allow this, people will die here, not in Gaza. And Hoyle obviously got quite scared and basically decided to break all sort of convention over this.
Was this they held a secret vote or something? Or
they didn't hold a secret vote, but there was a period of time between the debates where Hoyle was essentially browbeaten by a bunch of Labour MPs in a back room. Right. And that's why they think that he did this.
Right.
So, according to The Guardian, there were rumours on early Wednesday that Labour were leaning on the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, to break with convention and allow both the Labour and Tory amendments to be debated to save face for Keir Starmer, to head off mass rebellion, and probably other reasons. Right. But again, this is all implied.
Other reasons.
Yes. And you'll see why this is implied in a second, right? Again, it really isn't just going to be about saving face for Keir Starmer or to head off a Labour rebellion, right?
Because the SNP put forward this vote, which would have...
It was a debate.
Oh,
okay. They wanted a debate and then a resolution.
I see.
Hoyle had appeared at the Prime Minister's question times, but the moment he ended, he was out the door, hotly pursued by Starmer's team. Clearly, the Speaker had yet to make up his mind on how to proceed, to go with convention and drop the Labour amendment or plead special circumstances and let the whole House vote on both amendments as well as the SNP motion. Finally, Hoyle returned to the chamber. He had made a decision. He would allow both the Labour and government amendments. The Tory and SNP benches went wild with outrage. Cue total chaos in the Parliament, right? So, okay. So Hoyle then comes out afterwards and apologises. And again, just the nature of the apology reveals that this is not simply about the partisan politics of Labour versus Conservatives versus SNP.
I will reiterate, I made a judgment call that didn't end up in the position where I expected it to. I regret it. I apologise to the SNP. Just bear with me for a moment. I apologise, and I apologise to the House. I made a mistake. We do make mistakes. I own up to mine. I would say that we can have an SO24 to get an immediate debate, because the debate is so important to this House. I will defend every member in this House. Every member matters to me in this House. And it has been said, both sides, I never, ever want to go through a situation where I pick up a phone to find a friend of whatever side has been murdered by terrorists.
Right. There we go then. Because, I mean, why would terrorists murder one of the MPs over, I don't know, parliamentary procedure or something like that?
Well, what sort of terrorists? Are these right-wing radicals?
Well, at the same time, there was a massive Islamic mob outside of Parliament projecting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free on Big Ben, and assaulting Martin Daubney, assaulting Maya Tusi, and chanting and sending death threats to people. Right? That's why Lindsay Hoyle is effing terrified. That's why he thinks, and that's why he comes out and says, look, I don't actually want any of you to be murdered.
It's an interesting statement, isn't it? This debate is important to this House. Why? Not because
we might get killed.
Yeah, not because of party politics, not because we can affect change. As you say, you might as well be debating turning off the sun.
Yeah.
But because the guys outside will kill us.
Yeah.
So we will literally do whatever the people who say they can kill us want. That's how British politics works, according to the Speaker of the Parliament.
And this, and so it's not unreasonable at all to say they're being held hostage by this. And just to be clear, it's really not an unreasonable concern, because you may remember, of course, David Arnes, who was literally murdered by an Islamic terrorist, and Mike Freer, who retired earlier, in fact, just at the end of January, very recently, because of death threats from the Muslims Against Crusades group, I think it was, who sent those threats. And so there were people like this. This is a GB News producer who got a text from an MP. Some of us are really scared to leave, says the MP. One of my female colleagues was surrounded by nasty protesters in Westminster Hall earlier and filmed. She is in tears when she comes back to the tea room, just saying it is intolerable. I believe that they're afraid.
Well, and I think the 9-year-old girl who suffered at the hands of the grooming gangs was also terrified.
I agree. And
what a shame it's happening to MPs now.
Well, that is what I said.
But but everyone saw, right? I'm sure you guys did.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the public have zero sympathy.
Yeah.
There's no, that's terrible. It's no good.
No. It's not
Frankly,
that it's good, obviously.
No, but good. But you live in the same world we do.
Yeah. Finally, the problem that the British public has been dealing with for the past 25 years has finally reached the Parliament. The people who have made our lives a lot more difficult are now realizing we can do that to the MPs too, right?
Like, I reckon they're going to tweet in a couple of months, just like, man, groceries are expensive. Like,
possibly. But as I said, diversity is our strength. MPs, without immigration, the NHS will not survive. We have a duty to take refugees. Stop being racist. Kind regards, the British public. And so then Suella Braverman decided to come out and be like, hang on a second, maybe Islamic terrorists shouldn't be allowed to hold the Parliament hostage. I mean, this went down like a lead balloon with all of the politically correct Blairites. You can imagine what their response was. I mean,
by the way, the politically correct Blairites in the Conservative Party.
Yeah. Well, I mean, half of the Conservative Party are Blairites, the entire Labour Party, the SNP, the Lib Dems, the Greens. They all sign on to the Blair consensus.
Except with the Tories, they call themselves modernisers, but the same thing. They are Blairites.
They're all Blairites.
Let's stop for a minute just to assess the fact of her claim, which is mob outside. MPs saying they're getting death threats, so that's why they're doing what the mob wants.
MPs literally afraid of their lives. Lindsay Hoyle comes in and goes, look, I just don't want any of you murdered.
The mob are Islamists.
Previous MPs have been stabbed.
So Suella Braverman says Islamists are bullying Britain into submission. An accurate description of a series of events that just happened.
Yeah. Now, one interesting thing about this is that nobody seems to have actually read her article. Right? So I'm just going to read a couple of quotes from it, and we'll see if we think they're true. She says, the truth is that the Islamists, the extremists, and the anti-Semites are in charge now. They have bullied the Labour Party, they have bullied our institutions, now they are bullying our country into submission. But what is our response? Our leaders bury their heads in the sand, preferring the illusion of a successful multicultural society and terrified of being called racist. And what do you think the response to this was? I may have been sacked because I spoke out against the appeasement of Islamists, but I would do it again because we need to wake up to what we are sleepwalking into. a ghettoized society where free expression of British values are diluted, where Sharia law, the Islamist mob, and anti-Semites take over communities. We need to overcome the fear of being labelled Islamophobic and speak truthfully. Enough of the hand-wringing and apologies. Turning a blind eye to fanatics has got us into this terrible situation. It needs to stop.
Yeah, I did a Brokenomics with Robert Spencer, who talked about Islam quite a lot, and I asked him this question: why are we surrendering all the time to Islam? And he said it's because your politicians are literally scared and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, which is, as we've covered, literally the case.
There's a word in there that perked my interest: the phrase "sleepwalking."
Yeah,
the only people who have been asleep to this
are the politicians themselves.
Yeah,
but specifically the Conservative Party ones. You're the only one.
Yeah,
every other politician wants this to happen, and then every member of the public knows this is going on and hates it. The only people asleep are you.
Yeah. The rump of the Conservative Party that are not Blairites are the ones that have been asleep for this. The Blairites, of course, are all completely in favour of this regime and agenda because they have imported it and kowtowed to it for the last 25 years. And so this caused a bit of a stir. But the problem that the people who hate Suella Braverman have is, as you can see from her profile picture, she is a brown woman. And they can't just go, oh, I see you hate brown people then. However, Lee Anderson is not a brown woman. And so when he went on GB News, and we'll watch just the 30-second clip, and he responds to this.
I heard the comments earlier you was making about Suella, some of the comments she made earlier this week. And I don't actually believe that these Islamists have got control of our country, but what I do believe is they've got control of Khan, and they've got control of London. And again, this stems with Khan. He's actually given our capital city away to his mates. We've got Starmer. Beware, because if you let Labour in through the back door, expect more of this and expect our cities to be taken over by these lunatics.
Well, I mean, that also happened under the Conservatives.
So he basically just went and said a slightly more moderate version of what Suella said.
Yeah, it was more moderate. It was more refined. It's like not the entire country. It's actually
specific
capital.
Person.
Yeah, with a person who, as we will see in a minute, really does have a long history of being mates with crazy Islamists. It seems that there's not a jihadi Sadiq Khan hasn't defended at some point, actually. And feel free to sue me over that, Sadiq, if you think that I'm not correct. And so, okay, that's Lee Anderson's opinion. And the fact that, I mean, we've seen this at Speaker's Corner for years now. The fact that massive mobs of Muslims can go there, stab Christians, harass Christians, pray in public when you're not supposed to be allowed to pray there, but they can just, and the police just go, well, nothing we can do. This is just the way it is. Whereas they can arrest literally everyone else. And so what Lee is saying is it does seem that Sadiq Khan has definitely made it clear that it is acceptable to allow one group to do something that the other group is not allowed to do. And we are seeing the results of that all day, every day. But of course, Lee Anderson is a white man, a native British person with a northern accent. And therefore, he becomes the target. God, he's so much easier to attack than Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman, former member of the cabinet, brown woman who is saying exactly the same thing, tonally. Lee Anderson is just actually finessing that a bit, saying, well, you know, this is...
the guy in charge of law enforcement in London
might actually be the one who's responsible for this. Yeah.
Because the law enforcement enforce the law brutally when it's against natives.
Yeah.
But when it's against Islamists, they're very kid club.
Total hands off. And is the guy who's defended literally a 9/11 jihadi, Sadiq Khan's firm defended. Like, it's just like, okay, is this a weird coincidence? And when pressed on this, a Conservative source said, well, Lee was simply making the point that the mayor, in his capacity as the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, has abjectly failed to get a grip on the appalling Islamist marches that we've seen in London recently. Obviously true. And one might suggest that it's because of an ideological/religious sympathy that he has with these people.
You hate this game. It's like we try and qualify these things and sort of row back on them. No, it's just obviously true what you said at the beginning.
Yeah. It's obviously true what Suella's saying. It's obviously true what Lee Anderson's saying. And that's why these people have to be punished. So anyway, let's take a break from British politics and sail across the Atlantic to Liz Truss at CPAC. Because concurrently, while this was going on...
Looks like a fake image.
Yeah, it does. But it's not. Liz Truss was giving a speech at CPAC. Now, Liz Truss is not the world's greatest speaker. And I actually find myself rather kind of liking Liz Truss. But I'm not happy
Yeah.
that it has to be her that the message comes from necessarily, because she just isn't the world's greatest orator. But you can see like there are left-wing blogs who are just like, my God, this is what she said. And I'm going to read some of it. She says, in Britain, we only have 100 political appointees. None of them run government departments. Every government department, every agency is a permanent civil servant. What I discovered when she became Prime Minister is that I was not holding the levers of power. The levers were held by the Bank of England, the Office of Budget Responsibility. They weren't held by the Prime Minister or the Chancellor. If the Bank of England governor can't be sacked and the Prime Minister can be sacked, then the Bank of England will have more power than the PM. That is a problem with democracy. These are all true statements as far as I can tell. Right? We need a cadre of people who are prepared to serve. We need the Conservatives who are prepared to fight. We need the grassroots people who will back real Conservatives, and we put real pressure on Conservative MPs to be Conservative. We've got a massive problem with immigration in Britain, that we cannot deport immigrants because the left is fighting us in the courts. So we need Conservatives who are prepared to overturn this. This is just literally what we've been saying, word for word, on this podcast for the last 3 years, FYI.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd quibble on is we don't need the Conservatives. Conservatives are going to stop you from doing all of those things.
Sure, but she's identifying her own party as the roadblock.
We're not the only guys either. Like, anyone with eyes has seen that this is the case.
Sure, I'm not saying that she's been watching us. What I'm saying is, at least all of the people on the right harmonizing, going, oh, that is the problem, right? Everyone can see the same problem, right? She says there's going to be a by-election in the next few weeks in Rochdale that could see an Islamic party, a radical Islamic party, win the by-election. A vast majority of Britons don't want this to happen. They want to be a country that is. They don't want to be a country that is subject to Islamic terrorism, a country that backs Hamas. We have to reflect the people of Britain's views. That's why we need to take on the extreme leftists. And she seems to have no particular problem with a certain Muad'Dib,
Islamic
by which I mean Romy Tomlinson, which, as you can see, they're like, oh my God, Steve Bannon described Tommy Robinson as a hero, and she just said nothing about it. So, okay, good. That's interesting.
He's a folk hero.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another massive scandal that's happening at the upper echelons of the Conservative Party. Because, of course, Lee Anderson was the deputy chair of the Conservative Prime Minister, the Conservative Party, and, of course, Liz Truss, famously the world's shortest.
Lee Anderson was fired for what he said. And...
Well, we'll get to that. So anyway, so back in Parliament, all of this chaos is going on, and everyone's pressuring Sunak. Well, hang on a second. You're not allowed to have a guy who says things that people think are true, are you? And so Labour Chair Annalise Dodds said Lee Anderson's comments were unambiguously racist and Islamophobic. Okay. Lots of Labour MPs, like Dawn Butler, sent very official-sounding letters to the Prime Minister going, excuse me, Mr. Evil Conservative, I hate you. I hate everything you stand for. I hate Britain. And I think this country should be destroyed. And if you don't fire Lee Anderson, I'm going to call you names. Signed, your mortal enemy, Dawn Butler, right? All of it, like loads of them. And it's like, look, why would the Conservatives listen to any of this? But the problem is, of course, the call is coming from within the House. Lord Gavin Barwell, a Tory peer and former Chief of Staff to Theresa May, said that Anderson's comments were a despicable slur on Sadiq Khan. Right. So he's just jumped, no, you can't smear Sadiq Khan. Why?
I love the opposition. I love my enemies. They're the best.
Exactly. Why are you doing this?
Imagine Donald Trump coming out and being like, well, you don't criticize Biden.
Yeah, I know. It's mad. Rory Stewart, a former Tory minister, you remember Rory the Tory sits down with the communists and go, yeah, I'm a proper Tory. That's why I'm here talking to you and having a great time.
Opium man.
Yeah. He says, the idea that London is in the grip of Islamists is deluded and it's awful. An obsession that thrives among a bizarre and dangerous coalition. No Conservative MP should ever be spouting this stuff.
I mean, it's literally the case if you walked out of the House of Commons, you would get beaten up by them.
Yeah. It's not safe for Rory to walk the streets because he was a Conservative MP. Anyway, whatever, right? You're not allowed to say these things. That's the point. You're not supposed to be saying these things. So, this is just John Ashworth, Labour MP for Leicester South, being like, dangerous conspiracy theories, vile Islamophobia. And it's like, wow, this is a fantastic advert.
Leicester East is full of slaves.
Yes, that's... No. Well, this is for Leicester South.
Oh,
so, that's what's her face?
The Woos lady. I forget her.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. No, but this is the guy for Leicester South. And because he's totally different, you can tell that this place hasn't been diversified yet. But he's like, dangerous conspiracy theories, vile Islamophobia. my letter to Rishi Sunak congratulating him on a brilliant party. No, he's demanding he withdraws the whip from Truss and Anderson, of course, right?
But it's just back to your first point in this whole thing. The whole country's collapsing.
Yeah.
The constituency next to you, 1 in 8 people is a slave.
Yeah.
And you're like, but they're racism against millions.
Yeah. Racism against Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, the most powerful man in the south of England. Why do I care about that? But anyway, and so, okay, fine, Labour MPs can do it, but of course you've got James Cleverly going, well, I reject the claim. It's like, well, why is Lindsay Hoyle about to piss his pants in the Parliament? Why does he come out and literally be like, look, I don't want any of you to die?
This is why you people are all sleepwalking.
Yeah.
You know what they're doing is they're painting over the door to make it look like it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Sadiq Khan comes out, and when you take his statements out of context, they sound, well, like he's endorsing all of this. He said, these comments from a senior conservative are Islamophobic and anti-Muslim and are racist. I'm afraid that the deafening silence from Rishi Sunak and from the cabinet is them condoning this racism. In an alternate world, I'm afraid it confirms to many people across the country that there's a hierarchy when it comes to racism.
The Hindus are at the top.
The message it sends is Muslims are fair game when it comes to racism and anti-Muslim hatred.
Yeah, you are untouchable, so... I don't know why. I mean, if you've got the most Hindu government ever, I mean, why not just play into it?
Yeah, I know. What would Modi do?
Citizenship gone.
So anyway, Lee Anderson was, of course, suspended. Why not Sweller? Why not Sweller?
Wow. I mean,
Lee Anderson is a white man. Yeah. Sweller is not.
So who's at the bottom of that hierarchy? That hierarchy of racism. Who's acceptable to bully?
Oh, quite.
Yeah. Great question. Who is at the bottom of the hierarchy of racism? Well, Lee Anderson literally, tonally didn't say anything particularly different to Sweller. In fact, I think Sweller's statement is worse than Lee Anderson's, because Lee Anderson's at least naming an individual who has a history of being on this side of the argument as accused.
And Sadiq Khan gets people killed. So
does he get people killed? Well, I mean, I suppose he does, actually. Yeah, no, that's totally
You've got
a
Muslim woman, a Hindu woman who gets away with this. You've got the Muslim man who's actually causing this whole situation and death threats by his actions. And then you've got the white guy who's just like, this is a bit bad. The white guy is the guy who gets punished.
Yeah.
The thing is, this is how political debate moves. People make interventions and it shifts the Overton window slightly and people start talking about it. Yeah. What the Conservatives have just done is they've shut down anyone from talking about this again because they know they'll lose their job at the next election when they're deselected as a Tory MP.
No, they've shut down white men from talking about it.
Well, yes, that's true. But I mean, are they aggressively pursuing a policy of 0 seats at the next election? do they know something?
I guess they are.
But is it possible that they're in that much of a bubble, but they just don't know what they're doing? Or are they really trying to get to 0 seats for some reason?
I think that the moral framework that Blair imposed on this country is to them something unbreakable. I think they don't understand how they're supposed to push back against it. But Callum, just to clarify your point, Sadiq Khan did run on a platform of ending stop and search because it was racist, which led to an uptick of knife crime deaths. So you are right that his policies do get people killed.
Like, he's the most guilty human in these three.
Yes.
That should have punishment. And instead, he's the one with the least punishment.
Yeah. He's the one actually with the controlling hand in this circumstance. So anyway, Anderson gets suspended from the Tory party, because why wouldn't he? So what does he do? Does he at least put out his chest and go, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm right. And you know I'm right. No, instead he cucks, right? He cucks. Here's the comment. Following a call from the chief whip, I understand the difficult position I put both he and the prime minister in. Really, Sweller had nothing to do with this, right? With regard to my comments, I fully accept they had no option but to suspend the whip in these circumstances. I think they may have had other options. However, I will continue to support the government's call to efforts to call out extremism in all its forms, be that anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
What a beaten dog.
Yes. What a beaten dog. Nigel Farage was like, look, join reform and destroy the Tories. But no, instead...
You don't have to be bullied every day of your life, son.
Yeah, but yeah, it's exactly what it is. But instead, Lee Anderson decides, I'm going to be a cuckold, actually. I would rather bend over and take it from Sadiq Khan. Disgusting, pathetic, but what can you do?
Well, he could stand up. At any moment, he could stand up and he'd stop being a cuckold, but until then...
You could, but you know what's interesting? Why was he suspended from the Conservative Party?
Does he notice the obvious because he said it? Or?
No, because he refused to apologize. So being an Islamophobe in Rishi Modi's party is fine, right? But when you're called on it and you don't apologize, not being a cuck is the reason he got kicked out of the Conservatives. Sorry, are you not going to be cuckolded to the Labour Party and Sadiq Khan? You're out, sunshine. You're bloody out. How dare you? It's unbelievable.
And you make a good point to mention that we're sort of governed by an unelected Indian midget, because it does actually it does actually make a difference. Because when you've got a white guy in charge of the party saying that you have to, put up with all of this stuff, you can at least look at it and think, you do realise that it's your family who are going to be, getting the sharp end of this sooner or later. But it does make a difference when it's a foreigner who's saying to the white people, yeah, you've basically got to destroy yourselves.
Yeah, it's literally an argument from Indians against the Pakistani man, and the English guy's the guy who gets fired. So I'm just saying, I'm not a big guy on this subject, but there is an ethnic dimension here that appears to have made itself evident. But anyway, so meanwhile this is going on. Of course, Islamic mobs took over London Bridge. Sadiq Khan totally fine with it. Obviously, why wouldn't he be? Good thing I'm not going to London, basically. Anyway, after this, 3 female MPs, who are not named but were cited as members of the Conservative and Labour parties, have been provided with close protection, a permanent police bodyguard, because they apparently a risk assessment was conducted, and they are MPs from both major parties are at heightened risks of attacks. And of course, that's because in the last 8 years, 2 MPs have been murdered. This is the country that they have created. However, now you might be like, well, that's quite bad. Maybe that deserves. I mean,
who's doing the murdering?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. No idea, but the Metropolitan Police, we've found that there's been an unacceptable rise in Islamophobia incidents across the capital in recent months. This is deeply unsettling for Muslim communities and all of us who want to live in a peaceful and tolerant society. It's like, my God, they actually did the Norm Macdonald thing. Look, we know that
if a Muslim was to bomb Parliament, God, the backlash against the Muslims would be terrible.
Imagine the tolerant Muslims who it's just bonkers.
To be fair, if the Muslims did destroy Parliament at this point, I don't think there would be much of a backlash.
No, the English are probably cheering them on.
Yeah, but the point is that they shouldn't be this way. But anyway, so then you had conservative quislings like Baroness Said Warsi, who was like, hey, I'm the Blairite Muslim in the Conservative Party, and we have a rot of Islamophobia in our party. It's like, I'll just give over. But anyway, so getting to Sadiq Khan, and just a quick thread here about all of the extremists that he's defended in his career as a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, of course. 2003, he was a consultant of a defense team that defended, I can't pronounce that, a 9/11 terrorist who confessed to being a member of Al Qaeda. He also defended Louis Farrakhan. You know, the guy who said, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. Nation of Islam leader, massive anti-Semite, blah, blah, blah. There have been a bunch of others, of course. He didn't ban the Al-Quds March, which glorified an illegal jihadist terror organization. He, of course...
Yeah, that's a direct action he could have took and didn't.
Should have taken.
Because of why?
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with
sympathies. What else? What do you want me to say?
It's the same thing with the pro-Hamas October the 7th. I mean, there's literally people there with posters of the hang gliders. And, okay, that's an open glorification of terrorism.
Whereas the lockdown protesters got beaten. The Tommy guys got beaten.
Yeah.
These guys climbing over the statues and bringing banned group flags that can get you arrested in 10 years in prison. Yeah. Nothing. Just leave them alone.
Sadiq's brother-in-law participated in a demonstration led by the black flag of ISIS.
Well, I'm sure they're different brothers. So
yeah, it's just weird. Just something that happens.
Do you know the statistics on Muslims out of interest?
Which ones?
I was running some statistics. It turns out because there's 40,000 Muslims on the terror watch list in the United Kingdom, which is 1% of all Muslims in the United Kingdom. Which means if you're in a room of 100 Muslims, statistically speaking, one of them will be on the terror watch list. Whereas for non-Muslims, it's 1 in 15,000.
So I'd have to be at an Ariana Grande concert.
Yeah. But you think that march, I mean, how many people are at that march?
Yeah.
Because then you run the statistic and you've
then
got
there's
1,000 terror suspects.
Yeah, but then there's a self-selection bias as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, Sadiq, of course, goes to Al-Qaeda recruiters' marches, and it's just, it keeps going on. Right? It keeps
It's
going.
just painful how obvious all of this is.
But anyway, so this is he's got a long history of being sympathetic to Islamic extremism and defending it under his capacity as a human rights lawyer, guys. But anyways, Sunak finally issued a statement. Right? And I realize it's gone on a bit, but this is just, oh God, it's just so awful. Anyway, he says the events of recent weeks are but the latest in an emerging pattern which should not be tolerated. Legitimate protests hijacked by extremists to promote and glorify terrorism, elected representatives verbally threatened and physically and violently targeted, and anti-Semitic tropes beamed onto our own parliament building. And in parliament, and again, Sadiq Khan's police decided they weren't going to shut that down. It would have been illegal. Like Martin Daubney went there, was like, "You're not going to stop that." It's like, no, it's illegal. Yeah, it's illegal. So they're just going to let them do it, right? And in parliament this week, a very dangerous signal was sent that this sort of intimidation works. It is toxic for our society and our politics and affront to liberties and values we hold dear in Britain. Our democracy cannot and must not bend to the threat of violence and intimidation or fall into polarized camps who hate each other. I think it's really a little bit too late for that. The explosion in prejudice and anti-Semitism since the Hamas terror attacks on the 7th of October are unacceptable as they're un-British. Put simply, anti-Semitism is racism. Oh, God. Okay, yeah, okay. All we can talk about now is anti-Semitism. Brilliant.
Liberties and values that we all hold dear. Now, for some reason, there's massive anti-Semitism.
For some reason, lots of the people on one side of the aisle don't hold these dear.
I like the line that says, "I am proud to be the first British Asian Prime Minister." I noticed that he didn't say, "I am proud to be elected the first British Asian Prime Minister."
Yes. I'm proud to be the first British Asian Prime Minister. But I'm even prouder when it happened, it was not a focus at all. It is what makes me most proud of this country because it's proof we're the most successful multi-ethnic democracy in the world.
It wasn't a focus because you bloody rigged it, mate.
No one voted for you, Sadiq.
You cooed the government. And you're like, multi-ethnic democracy.
Yeah.
Sorry, you coup the government.
And if I was,
and the ethnic groups are all trying to kill each other, and you're like, successful multi-ethnic democracy.
And then you just pan out, the camera keeps panning out, and it's the decrepit ruins of England that zooming out on. And it's like, what the hell is going on here, man? But anyway, so you got like journos who are like, "Oh, it feels like we got very close to anarchy." Sorry, what? Like it would be anarchy for Lee Anderson and Suena Braverman to say things that are true about this country?
Oh, he's not talking about the mob.
No.
He's talking about people commenting on the mob.
The narrative.
Oh, what a massive.
What will he do about Braverman and Truss? It's anarchy if they're allowed to tell the truth about what's going on. Well done, Tim Walker. I'm sure that the mobs will spare you when your time comes. But anyway, I just want to finish this by saying, look, right, go over to lotuseast.com, sign up, support us, because of course we get demonetized for this sort of thing, and then go and watch my video on the concept of representation. This is one of the few books that ever talks about what it means to be represented, and then come back and watch this segment and ask yourself, at what point are you being made present? Because if you are an Englishman, you got made present in what happened to Lee Anderson. Right, that will happen to you. That'll probably happen to us. Happen to everyone. Like this, the country has essentially been hijacked for foreign interests by an agenda that does not do anything to serve this country, and it's just driving me mad.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode on what makes a film good. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.